Some places remember. They hold on to darkness like a scar that never heals. Tonight, we're traveling to New Jersey, a state where colonial history bleeds into modern nightmares, where dense forests hide secrets older than America itself, and where ordinary roads transform into corridors of terror after sunset. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. These are stories rooted in real locations, real disappearances, and real fear that still grips the people who live there. 3 tales, 3 different corners of New Jersey, 3 reasons why some places should never be visited alone. Before we descend into the darkness, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now, because once you hear these stories, you'll understand why you need to stay connected to this channel. The things lurking in New Jersey don't stay in New Jersey. Let's begin with a road that has claimed more lives than any accident ever could. Story 1: The Last Drive on Clinton Road. Clinton Road winds through the woods of West Milford, New Jersey, like a black serpent through dead leaves. 10 miles of cracked asphalt cutting through forests so thick that even on sunny days, the canopy chokes out the light. Local police won't patrol it after dark. Tow truck drivers charge double to retrieve broken-down vehicles. And those who live nearby, they take the long way home, every single time. Marcus Chen didn't believe in ghost stories. The 28-year-old software engineer had just moved to New Jersey from California for a job in Newark. When his co-workers warned him about Clinton Road during a Friday happy hour, he laughed it off. Urban legends, he called them. Campfire tales to scare teenagers. "I'll drive it tonight," he announced, his third beer making him bold. "I'll live stream the whole thing. You'll see there's nothing out there." His co-workers exchanged glances. Sarah, the office manager, leaned forward. "Marcus, I'm serious. People disappear on that road. Just last year." "I'll be fine," he interrupted, already pulling up the route on his phone. "It's just a road." At 11:47 p.m., Marcus turned onto Clinton Road from Route 23. He'd set up his phone on the dashboard, streaming to his Instagram followers. 43 people were watching. "All right, everyone, let's debunk some Jersey folklore." The first mile was unremarkable. Trees pressed close on both sides, their branches creating a tunnel effect. His headlights caught occasional reflective eyes, probably deer. The road curved and twisted, forcing him to slow down. No streetlights, no houses, just endless forest and the yellow line disappearing into darkness ahead. At mile marker 3, his phone screen flickered. "Connection's getting spotty," he narrated. "Probably the trees." But when he glanced at the viewer count, it had jumped to 340 people, then 890. The number kept climbing even as his signal bars dropped to nothing. The comments section scrolled too fast to read, a blur of text he couldn't make out. Then his headlights caught something on the road ahead. A figure stood in the middle of the lane, small, child-sized. Marcus slammed the brakes. His phone flew off the dashboard and landed screen down on the passenger floor. The car screeched to a stop 20 feet from the figure. It was a boy, maybe 9 or 10 years old. He wore old-fashioned clothing, knee-length pants, a button-up shirt and suspenders. Pale skin almost luminescent in the headlight beams. He stared directly at Marcus with eyes that reflected light like an animal's. Marcus's heart hammered. He rolled down his window halfway. "Hey kid, you okay? Are you lost?" The boy didn't respond, didn't blink, just stared with those reflective eyes. "Where are your parents?" Still nothing. Marcus reached for his phone, thinking he should call the police. But when his fingers touched it, the screen was ice cold. Frost crystallized across the glass. The device was completely dead despite being at 87% battery moments ago. When he looked back up, the boy was gone. Just gone. The road ahead was empty. Marcus's breath came in short gasps. His hands trembled on the steering wheel. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. He needed to turn around, get off this road, get back to civilization. But Clinton Road is narrow, with deep drainage ditches on both sides. There was nowhere to turn around. He had to keep going forward, had to find a wider spot or a side road. He pressed the accelerator. The car moved forward slowly, his eyes scanning the darkness for any place to turn. The trees seemed to lean in closer now, their branches scraping the roof of his car with skeletal fingers. That's when he saw the lights in his rearview mirror. Headlights. Close. Too close. Right on his bumper. Marcus's first reaction was relief. Another person. He wasn't alone out here. But the relief curdled into unease when he realized how close the vehicle was following. Inches from his rear bumper. And it was gaining speed, pushing him to go faster. He accelerated. The lights stayed glued to him. He tried to wave the other driver around, but the road was too narrow, curbs too sharp. And the lights kept coming, kept pushing, forcing him faster and faster around blind corners. 40 miles per hour, 50, 60 on a road not meant for anything over 35. "Back off!" Marcus screamed, though no one could hear him. His car hit a pothole and fish-tailed. He overcorrected, nearly sliding into the ditch. Behind him, the lights flashed bright, then brighter until they were so intense he couldn't see anything in his mirrors except white glare. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, the lights vanished. Marcus slammed on his brakes, his car skidding to a stop in the middle of the road. He was breathing hard, hands locked on the wheel. When he dared to look in the rearview mirror, there was nothing, just darkness and empty road. No car, no lights, nothing. His rational mind tried to provide explanations. The other driver had turned off. There must have been a side road he missed. But he knew there had been no turnoff. And those lights had been closer than any vehicle could safely follow. Marcus sat there in the silent dark, trying to slow his racing heart. He needed to keep moving, needed to get off this road. The clock on his dashboard read 12:03 a.m. He'd only been driving for 16 minutes. It felt like hours. He started driving again, slower now, eyes darting between the road and his mirrors. The forest pressed in from all sides, an infinite wall of black. His headlights seemed dimmer somehow, not reaching as far into the dark. Then he saw the bridge, a small stone bridge, barely wide enough for one car. Locals called it Dead Man's Curve, though Marcus didn't know that. The bridge crossed over Clinton Brook, and beneath it, the legend said, something waited. As his car rolled onto the bridge, his engine sputtered. Once, twice, then died completely. All the lights went out, headlights, dashboard, everything. Marcus was plunged into absolute darkness. No, no, no! He turned the key. Nothing. Not even a click. Come on! In the silence, he heard water. The brook flowing beneath the bridge, a gentle trickling that should have been peaceful, but somehow sounded wrong. Too rhythmic, almost like whispering. Then, from underneath the bridge came a new sound. Scraping. Like something dragging itself across stone, slowly, deliberately, getting closer. Marcus's hands shook so badly he could barely grip the door handle. He had to run, had to get out of the car and run. But run where? Into the forest? Back down the dark road where phantom lights chased drivers to their deaths? The scraping grew louder, closer, right beneath his car now. Something bumped the undercarriage. Marcus bit back a scream. His hand found the door handle, pulled it. The door opened with a click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. That's when his phone screen lit up. Lying on the passenger floor where it had fallen, the dead phone blazed to life with that same ice-cold glow. The live stream was still running. The viewer count read 13,847. But it was the comment section that made Marcus's blood freeze. The same message repeated hundreds of times, scrolling past too fast to count. Not from different users, all from the same account name, Marcus_Chen. His own account commenting on his own stream, but he wasn't typing anything. Another bump from beneath the car, harder this time. The vehicle rocked. Marcus grabbed his phone. It was still ice cold, frost spreading across the screen, and bolted from the car. His feet hit the bridge and he ran without looking back, ran toward the far end of the bridge, ran into the darkness ahead. Behind him, he heard his car door slam shut. Then, the engine roared to life. He spun around just in time to see his own vehicle roll backwards off the bridge. It plunged into the brook with a tremendous splash, water erupting upward. Then silence. The car was gone, swallowed by water that couldn't have been more than 3 feet deep. Marcus stood there alone on the dark road, phone clutched in his trembling hand. The screen still showed the live stream, still showed those repeating comments, but now a new message appeared. "You're still on Clinton Road." He looked around. The bridge was behind him, the forest surrounded him, and ahead, winding into infinite darkness, was more road, always more road. According to the GPS on his frozen phone, he'd only made it 4.2 miles. He still had 5.8 miles to go. Marcus started walking. He walked through that night, through the hours of darkness. He walked past impossible things, houses that appeared and disappeared, other cars that drove by without drivers, faces in the trees that turned to watch him pass. They found him at sunrise walking along Route 23, miles from where Clinton Road ended. He was barefoot. His shoes had apparently dissolved off his feet during the night, though he had no memory of it happening. His phone was still clutched in his hand, dead and covered in frost, despite the warm June morning. The live stream had been saved, all 6 hours and 47 minutes of it. But when investigators watched it back, all they saw was static and shadows. No boy in the road, no chasing lights, no bridge. Just Marcus's verified face in the dashboard glow, talking to himself, screaming at nothing. His car was never found. Search and rescue combed Clinton Brook and the surrounding forest for weeks. Nothing. As if the vehicle had never existed. Marcus doesn't talk about that night anymore. He moved back to California within a month, but late at night, his old Instagram account still goes live. The stream shows nothing but darkness and the sound of water, and in the comments, one message repeats endlessly: "You're still on Clinton Road." The viewer count keeps climbing. Last anyone checked, it was over 2 million people watching a dead man's stream of absolute nothing. Or maybe not nothing. Because if you watch long enough, if you turn up your brightness and really look into that darkness, you might see what those 2 million people are watching. You might see headlights in the distance, getting closer, always getting closer, but never arriving. We're just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. If you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. Click that button because the Pine Barrens are waiting, and what lives there has been hungry for a very, very long time.
Story 2: The Pine Barrens Communion. The New Jersey Pine Barrens stretch across 1.1 million acres of coastal plain, ancient cedar swamps, dense forests, and sandy soil that swallows sound like a grave swallows a body. The Lenape people called it Popuessing, place of the dragon. European settlers called it the Pines. Everyone who lives near it calls it something else after dark: forbidden.
Deep in the heart of the Barrens, there's a church that isn't on any map. Sarah Mitchell found it on October 3, 2019, though she wasn't looking for it. The 33-year-old botanist had come to the Barrens to study invasive plant species for Rutgers University. She had permits, GPS coordinates for safe camping spots, and enough supplies for a week-long solo expedition. What she didn't have was any knowledge of what the locals could have told her. Never go off trail after sunset, never follow lights in the forest, and never, ever answer if something calls your name in a voice you recognize. Sarah set up camp at her designated spot, a clearing near Batstow Lake, just before 4 p.m. She'd had a productive day collecting samples and taking soil measurements. As the sun dipped below the tree line, she started a small camp stove to heat her dinner. That's when she heard the bells. Church bells. Distant but clear, ringing out across the forest in a slow, methodical toll. Sarah frowned. She'd studied the maps extensively. There was no church within 10 miles of her location, no buildings at all except the historic Batstow Village, and that was in the opposite direction. The bells continued, 12 measured tolls, then silence. Curiosity overrode caution. Sarah was a scientist, trained to investigate anomalies. She grabbed her headlamp, compass, and radio, then headed toward the sound. The forest changed within 50 yards of her campsite. The pine trees grew denser, their trunks wider. The ground became softer, almost spongy beneath her boots. Mist rose from the soil, unusual for an October evening that wasn't particularly cold. Her headlamp beam seemed weaker somehow, not cutting through the darkness the way it should. She should have turned back. Every instinct screamed at her to return to camp, but Sarah was close now. She could see a glow through the trees ahead, not firelight or electric light, but something else, something that pulsed with a rhythm like breathing. She pushed through a final wall of undergrowth and stopped dead. A church stood in a clearing that shouldn't exist. It was old, colonial-era construction, white clapboard siding weathered to gray. A small steeple rose from the roof, topped with a cross that tilted at an unnatural angle. Warm light glowed from the windows, and inside, Sarah could hear something that made her skin crawl. Singing. Voices raised in a hymn she didn't recognize. The melody was wrong, the harmonies discordant in ways that made her teeth ache. But beneath the wrongness, she could hear words. Come inside, the shepherd calls his flock. Come inside, before the door is locked. The door stood open. Every rational part of Sarah's brain told her to run. This was wrong. Churches don't just appear in the middle of protected wilderness. The building itself looked solid, real, but her scientific training recognized impossibility when she saw it. Yet her feet moved forward, one step, another, drawn by a compulsion she couldn't name. She reached the threshold and looked inside. The pews were full. Dozens of people sat in neat rows, their backs to her, all facing an altar at the far end. They wore old-fashioned clothing, styles from different eras all mixed together. A woman in a Victorian dress sat next to a man in 1950s workwear. A child in colonial-style knee breeches sat perfectly still, hands folded. None of them turned to look at her. They just kept singing that awful hymn. At the altar stood a figure in minister's robes. Tall, too tall. The proportions weren't quite right. Its back was to Sarah, but she could see its hands, long, pale fingers that bent at too many joints as they gestured in time with the singing. The compulsion pulled harder. Come inside. Join the congregation. Take your seat. Sarah's foot lifted, about to cross the threshold. Then her radio crackled. Static burst from the device on her belt,
painfully loud in the quiet forest. The singing stopped. Every head in the church turned as one to look at her. Sarah's scream died in her throat. They had no faces. Smooth, blank expanses of skin where eyes and mouths should have been. But she could feel them looking at her, could sense the hunger in those impossible gazes. The minister turned. Its face wasn't blank. It had features, human features, stretched across something that was very much not human. Its smile was too wide, splitting its face nearly to its ears. And when it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. From the walls of the church, from the ground beneath her feet, from inside her own chest. "You're late for communion." Sarah ran. She crashed back into the forest, branches tearing at her face and clothes. The singing resumed behind her, louder now, the words changing. She's running, but where can she go? The forest remembers what she doesn't know. Her headlamp flickered and died. Sarah ran in absolute darkness, hands stretched in front of her, trusting nothing but her desperate need to get away. She could hear footsteps behind her. Too many footsteps, more than a congregation of 30 or 40 could make. A stampede of the faceless, chasing her through the barrens. She burst through a wall of undergrowth and splashed into water. The shock of cold up to her knees made her stumble. A stream or creek. The footsteps grew closer. She could hear breathing now. Dozens of breaths that all matched the same rhythm. In and out, like a single massive lung. Then she saw lights ahead. Flashlights. Multiple beams cutting through the forest. "Help!" Sarah screamed. "Please, help me!" The lights moved toward her. She ran through the water, splashing, falling, pulling herself up again. The footsteps behind her stopped at the water's edge. The singing cut off mid-word. 3 park rangers emerged from the forest. Their faces were real, human, concerned. They wore proper uniforms with badges and radios. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The lead ranger, a middle-aged man named Davis, according to his name tag, reached to help her from the water. "We got a report of someone off trail after dark." Sarah couldn't speak. She could only point back the way she came, toward the church, toward the faceless congregation. The rangers turned their flashlights in that direction. The beams illuminated only forest. Dense, dark, normal forest. No church, no clearing, no glow. There was a church, Sarah gasped. Right there, with people inside. But they weren't people, they were... "You're all right now," Ranger Davis said firmly. "You're safe. Let's get you back to your camp." They led her through the forest, their lights pushing back the darkness. It took 20 minutes to reach her campsite. Her tent stood exactly as she had left it, her camp stove still warm. According to her watch, only 35 minutes had passed since she'd heard the bells. It felt like hours. The rangers made her coffee, checked her for injuries, asked questions about what she'd eaten or drunk, whether she'd hit her head. They were professional, concerned, and completely certain she'd experienced some kind of hallucination. "The Barrens can play tricks on people," Ranger Davis said. "The mist, the silence, the isolation, your mind fills in the gaps with things that aren't there." But Sarah saw the look he exchanged with the other rangers. She saw how they positioned themselves between her tent and the forest, how they kept their flashlights on, pointed outward, even though dawn was only an hour away. They knew something. They just weren't saying it. They escorted her out at first light. She didn't argue. She packed her equipment in silence, loaded her truck, and drove away from the Pine Barrens without looking back. She never wrote her research paper, never finished her PhD. Within 6 months, she'd left academia entirely and moved to Arizona, the driest, most open place she could find, somewhere with no forests, no mist, no hidden churches. But the dream started 3 weeks after she left New Jersey. Every night the same dream. She's back in that clearing, standing at the church threshold. The faceless congregation sits in their pews. The minister, with its too wide smile, beckons to her. "You're late for communion," it says. And this time, there are no rangers to save her. This time, her feet carry her over the threshold. The door swings shut behind her with a boom that sounds like church bells. She takes her seat in the last pew and waits for her face to smooth over like blank paper. Sarah wakes up screaming every single night. The worst part? Each morning, she finds pine needles in her bed, fresh ones, still green and soft, smelling of the barrens. She's in Arizona. There are no pine trees within 100 miles of her apartment, but the needles keep appearing. Last month, Sarah posted in an online forum for people who had had strange experiences in the Pine Barrens. She asked if anyone else had found the church. Dozens of people responded. They'd all found it, different years, different locations, but the same church, the same faceless congregation, the same minister with its terrible smile. And they all reported the same thing: the dreams, the needles, the growing certainty that one night they won't wake up from that dream. One night they'll take their seat in that pew, and they'll stay there. Because the church is always having communion, and the congregation is always hungry for more members. The post was deleted within hours. Forum moderators said it violated community guidelines. But Sarah had already received one private message before it was taken down, from Ranger Davis. It contained only 3 words: "Stop looking back," and a photo of a church in a clearing, white clapboard siding, tilted cross on the steeple, door standing open, and sitting in the last pew, visible through a window, a figure with a smooth, featureless face, wearing Sarah's jacket, the one she'd been wearing that night, the one currently hanging in her closet in Arizona, 2,000 miles away. Sarah doesn't sleep anymore if she can help it. She keeps every light in her apartment on. She burns sage, plays recordings of white noise, does everything she can to keep the dreams at bay. But exhaustion always wins in the end. And when she sleeps, she hears the bells. 12 measured tolls echoing across impossible distance, calling her home, calling her back to the Pine Barrens, where a congregation waits with infinite patience. Because the church isn't bound by distance or time. It exists in the spaces between. And once it marks you, once you cross its threshold, even if you run, even if you escape, you belong to it. You're just late for communion. The Rangers know this. That's why they patrol the Barrens in groups of 3 or more after dark. That's why they mark certain areas as forbidden on maps that only they can see. That's why they sometimes find hikers who've gone missing, sitting peacefully in the middle of the forest with no memory of the last 3 days, pine needles in their hair, and a distant look in their eyes. They check those hikers carefully, looking for a telltale sign, looking to see if their faces are starting to smooth over. Most are fine. Most had ordinary experiences, got lost, got scared, got found. But some have that look, that distant, dreamy expression, and within a week, those people always return to the Pine Barrens. They pack up their lives, drive back to New Jersey, and walk into the forest. No one sees them leave, but rangers sometimes hear singing on still nights, drifting through the trees, a hymn in an impossible key, voices raised in worship of something that was never meant to have a congregation. Sarah Mitchell is still in Arizona, still fighting sleep, still finding pine needles in her bed every morning. But she started keeping a packed bag by her door. Her GPS is programmed with coordinates in the Pine Barrens, and some mornings she wakes up with her car keys in her hand and no memory of picking them up. The church is patient. It can wait. It has all the time in the world for communion.
Still with me? Good, because our final story is the darkest of all. Make sure you hit that like button if you're enjoying these tales from the Garden State shadows, and keep watching, because the last story, it's the one that might follow you home.
Story 3: The Faces in Fairview Cemetery. Fairview Cemetery sits on a hill overlooking Westfield, New Jersey. Established in 1868, it sprawls across 43 acres of carefully maintained grounds. But Fairview has a section that's different from the rest. The locals call it the Children's Garden, tucked in the northeast corner behind willow trees. 63 graves, all children under 12, all buried between 1883 and 1889. A scarlet fever epidemic, the records say. Detective James Torres first heard about it from his daughter, Emma, age 7. On November 14, 2022, she came home asking a question that made his blood run cold. "Daddy, why did you tell those kids I couldn't play with them?" Emma described children at the cemetery, pale, in Victorian clothes, covered in dirt. But James had driven straight home from school. They'd never stopped at Fairview. Yet Emma described the cemetery in perfect detail. Iron gates, willow trees, small headstones with carved lambs. She'd never been there. That night, James drove to Fairview alone. Just as he was about to leave, he saw movement in the children's garden. Small figures moving between headstones. Children playing, their movements jerky and strange. He grabbed his flashlight. "The cemetery's closed! You kids need to go home!" They turned toward him as one. Even from 50 yards away, he could see their faces, impossibly pale, Victorian clothing covered in dark stains. They stared, then vanished among the monuments. James tried to convince himself it was a trick of the light, but Emma's dreams started that night. She woke screaming at 2 a.m. "They're mad at you, Daddy. They said you were rude. They just wanted to play." The dreams continued every night for a week. The pale children asking Emma to play, getting angry when she refused. On the 7th night, James woke to find Emma's bed empty. He knew where she was. He climbed over the locked cemetery gates, calling for her. Then he heard singing from the children's garden. "Come and play, come and stay, under the ground where we lay. Daddy was rude, now he'll see what happens to those who won't let us be." Emma stood surrounded by dozens of pale children in Victorian clothes, holding hands in a circle, singing. She was singing with them. "Emma! Come here right now!" Her face was blank. "We're playing a game, Daddy. Don't be rude again." One girl spoke in a voice like wind through dead leaves. "You were rude. You yelled at us." Another said, "She can stay with us. We're lonely. Everyone tells us to go away, to stay dead, but we just want to play." James stepped forward. The circle tightened. "You can't have her. She's my daughter. She belongs with the living." The children tilted their heads in unison. "Everyone alive becomes dead eventually. We can wait." Then a small boy spoke. "We'll make a deal. We'll let her go if you stay, just to play one game with us. We're so lonely." James agreed. Emma walked past him toward the gates with a blank expression, while James turned back to the dead children. "What's the game?" "Hide and seek. You're it. If you find all of us before sunrise, you can leave. If you don't..." James closed his eyes and counted to 100. When he opened them, the cemetery seemed endless. Time felt wrong. He found children hiding in impossible places, inside sealed crypts, beneath the ground,
perched in trees. As dawn approached, the children gathered again. "You found most of us, but sunrise is coming and you didn't find everyone. Please, I have a daughter. She needs me." "We had parents too. They buried us here and forgot about us." The sky lightened. James pleaded, "There must be something I can do." The children exchanged glances. Finally, the girl spoke. "Visit us, everyone. Bring us toys. Tell our stories. Remember our names. We don't want to be forgotten. That's worse than death." The sun broke over the horizon. James blinked, and suddenly he was outside the gates, next to his car. His phone showed 6:47 a.m. Emma was asleep in the back seat, safe. James never told anyone what really happened, but he started visiting the children's garden weekly, bringing toys, researching the children's stories. Other families noticed and joined him. The children's garden became a place of remembrance instead of neglect. The sightings of pale children stopped, mostly. Emma is 14 now. She visits with her father, bringing flowers, reading names aloud. Last month, she asked why he did this. James thought about the night he played hide and seek with the dead. Because everyone deserves to be remembered, no matter how long they've been gone. That night, he dreamed of the children playing in sunshine, their clothes clean, faces full of color and life. The girl who'd spoken to him turned and waved. "Thank you for remembering us." The dead aren't always vengeful. Sometimes they're just lonely, waiting for someone to acknowledge that their brief lives had meaning. 3 stories, 3 corners of New Jersey. 3 reminders that some places remember, and sometimes what they remember isn't ready to stay buried. These stories are real. The locations exist. The accounts come from people who experienced something they couldn't explain. If you ever find yourself driving through New Jersey at night, remember these stories. And if you see a child playing alone in a cemetery after dark, keep driving. Because some games aren't meant for the living. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more true horror stories. Drop a comment telling me which story terrified you most, and I'll see you in the next video, if you dare come back. Stay safe out there.